It's late November 1948, out in the vast, windswept plains of eastern Montana, where the sky stretches forever and the winters can turn deadly without warning. And there's this old Norwegian rancher named Lars Ericson, 63 years old, with weathered hands and a lifetime of hard-learned lessons from the old country. Trudging through the frost-covered fields, stacking bale after bale of hay in a way that looks downright crazy to everyone around him. Building what he calls a hay dome, basically a giant igloo made entirely out of compressed hay bales. No nails, no wood, no fancy tools, just hay stacked in a perfect circle, 40 feet across. With walls 12 inches thick and a clever air gap in between to trap warmth, rising up to 14 feet high in the center, like some ancient Viking shelter reborn on American soil. And as he's doing this, with his son Martin, who's just back from the war, at 27, fresh-faced, but battle-hardened, the neighbors start gathering at the fence lines, chuckling under their breaths at first, then outright laughing, calling it a fool's project, a relic from the Stone Age that won't last a single gust, because who in their right mind would trust a pile of hay to protect 43 head of Hereford cattle through the brutal Montana winter when everyone else is pouring money into modern pole barns with insulated steel and forced air heaters, structures that cost thousands and promise all the latest in ranching technology. But Lars, he's not listening to the mockery from folks like Tom Bradley, the big-shot neighbor running 2,000 head on his sprawling spread with his $12,000 barn that everyone envies. Or Carl Peterson, the third-generation rancher who swears by his engineered lumber and ventilation systems. No, Lars is drawing on stories from his grandfather back in Norway, who in 1891 built something similar and saved 40 animals during a killer freeze. So he's meticulously overlapping each 70-pound bale by 6 inches for strength, angling the entrance southeast with a 15-degree inward tilt to baffle the wind, 4 feet wide and 7 high. No foundation needed because the hay's own weight holds it down. And thinking about the thermal mass, 16 tons of it, how the hay's trapped air gives an insulation value that's off the charts. Around R43 for those 12 inches, and its hygroscopic nature means it can absorb moisture during the day and release it at night without rotting from the inside. All natural, all free. But the laughter grows louder when Robert Henshot, the county agricultural extension agent with his fancy degree from Montana State College, shows up and declares it hazardous, warning about poor ventilation leading to ammonia buildup, fire risks from dry hay, moisture saturation that could collapse the whole thing, and structural failure under heavy snow or wind. And at the December Cattlemen's Association meeting, they even vote unanimously to pressure Lars to move his cattle to a proper shelter. Because this hay igloo, they say, is a death trap waiting to happen. But Lars stands firm, knowing deep in his bones that sometimes the old ways are the smartest. Especially when you're out of options and cash is tight after the war years. And as December rolls in, the temperatures start dipping. First to -18 outside but a cozy 28 inside the dome. Then -23 out but 24 in, and on Christmas Eve, -8 out but 36 in, proving it's working even before the real cold hits. But whispers spread through the valley that Lars is tempting fate, that his stubbornness will cost him everything. And then, as the new year approaches, the skies darken ominously, winds pick up, and the first flakes of what will become the worst blizzard in 75 years begin to fall, leaving everyone wondering if the old man's crazy invention will hold, or if the mockers will be proven right in the most tragic way possible, as the January blizzard unleashes its fury across Montana in 1949, turning the landscape into a white hell with temperatures plummeting to -50 degrees Fahrenheit and wind chills scraping near -80, winds howling at 35 to 55 miles per hour, piling snow into drifts over 4 feet high and sometimes 14 on the windward sides, isolating ranches for days on end in what historians would later call the harshest winter since 1874. Lars Ericson's hay igloo stands defiant amid the chaos, its dome shape shedding snow like a natural armor, the added drifts actually boosting the insulation with an extra R value of about 14 from the packed snow S1.0 per inch, pushing the total wall resistance to an astonishing R280, while inside, the 43 Hereford cattle huddle calmly, their body heat around 200 pounds of daily vapor from respiration and waste, migrating outward through the hay without causing interior condensation, freezing only in the outer layers and keeping the air dry and breathable. Number ammonia buildup because of the natural ventilation through the porous walls. Exchanges just enough without letting the cold rush in, and when Lars braves the storm on January 6 to check, he finds the interior stabilized at 31 degrees against the outsides, -47, a whopping 78-degree differential that keeps the animals' coats dry. No frostbite, no respiratory distress, just contented lowing as they munch on the supplemental feed he's stored inside. Zero losses through the 11-day ordeal that feels like it might never end. While across the county, the so-called modern barns are failing spectacularly. Take Tom Bradley's pride and joy, that expensive pole barn, where he has to run for propane heaters non-stop at $340 a week in fuel alone. But the vents ice over, cutting off airflow, and by January 10th, he's lost 5 head to cold stress and pneumonia. His cattle shivering and dropping weight at an alarming rate. Or Carl Peterson, who watches helplessly as 11 of his animals succumb. The engineered systems overwhelmed by the relentless wind and moisture that seeps in despite the insulation, leading to county-wide mortality rates averaging 0.4%. Some ranches hitting 40%, with feed costs spiking 40 to 60% from the extra needed to combat weight loss, and fuel bills ballooning 300 to 400% as heaters struggle against the elements. But Lars' total costs are a mere $127 in supplemental feed. No fuel, no electricity, and his cattle only lose an average of 12 pounds each, compared to 83 in the fancy barns, preserving their breeding condition and market value. All because the hay dome's passive design, relying on thermal mass, trapped air, and smart moisture management, outsmarts the storm without a single mechanical part. And as the blizzard finally breaks on January 13th, Robert Henshaw, the skeptical agent, skis over for an inspection, his face turning red with embarrassment as he measures the 71-degree average temperature differential that has better than any modern structure S56, apologizing to Lars for dismissing the primitive idea, admitting that traditional knowledge from Norway had something to teach even the experts. But as word spreads through the thawing valley of how the laughed-at Igloo saved every single animal, while others suffered devastating losses totaling $187,000 across 37 ranches, questions start bubbling up. Could this be the start of a revolution in ranching? Or would pride keep the mockers from admitting they were wrong? And what would happen when Lars shares his secrets at the emergency meeting on February 7th? In the aftermath of that brutal 1949 blizzard, Espanol, as Montana digs out from under the snow and ranchers tally their heartbreaking losses, Lars Ericson becomes an unlikely hero in the valley near Circle, his hay igloo not just surviving, but thriving. Proving that sometimes innovation comes from looking backward to time-tested wisdom rather than chasing the latest gadgets. And at the February 7th emergency meeting, where the community gathers to lick their wounds and figure out how to prevent such disaster again, Lars quietly shares the details of his design, the importance of a solid foundation even if it is just packed earth, selecting dry bales with the string side inward for stability, creating that crucial air gap for insulation, mastering the dome geometry to distribute weight evenly, and designing the entrance to block wind while allowing minimal ventilation. All principles drawn from his grandfather's 1891 success in Norway, and before long, he's leading workshops in March, training 14 ranchers and 23 hands who are now eager to learn what they once ridiculed, resulting in 7 new hay domes popping up by late March. The technique spreading like wildfire through word of mouth, and a simple bulletin to neighboring states like Wyoming, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Then onward to Minnesota and Idaho by 1950. And a 1952 study even documents over 400 installations across the region, each saving an average of $1,200 annually in reduced fuel costs and lower mortality rates, turning what was seen as a quirky immigrant, as folly, into a practical lifeline for cash-strapped operations in remote areas. But as the 1950s roll on with cheap fuel and widespread electrification making heated barns more accessible, adoption wanes. Insurance companies remain skeptical of insuring these unconventional structures. And by the time Lars passes away in 1961, at age 75, fewer than 70 domes are still in active use. Though his son Martin preserves the legacy by documenting everything and donating the papers to the Montana Historical Society in 19, where they sit quietly until the 2000s when sustainable living enthusiasts rediscover them through the internet and e-revs, sparking a revival with over 300 new builds by 2015, extending even to Canada, Iceland, and Mongolia, where harsh winters demand clever solutions, and universities begin incorporating the hay dome into courses on vernacular engineering and passive climate control, highlighting how Lars's creation challenged the assumption that modern always means better, especially in extreme conditions where reliability trumps complexity, showing that thermal mass, natural insulation, and smart moisture handling can outperform mechanical systems with zero energy input. A lesson that's more relevant today than ever as we face climate uncertainties and seek low, eco-friendly ways to protect livestock. And thinking back on how everyone laughed until the storm hit, it's a reminder that true ingenuity often comes from the underdogs, the ones willing to blend old-world knowledge with necessity, saving not just animals, but entire ways of life. So if this story of resilience and clever survival against the odds has you hooked on history's hidden gems, hit that like button, subscribe for more tallies from the American frontier that prove the past still has plenty to teach us. And drop a comment below, sharing your own family stories of beating the elements. Who knows? Your anecdote might inspire the next video.